Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas follows Henry Hill and his life in the mafia. Hill, along with his friends Jimmy and Tommy, are small-time gangsters who rob, steal and cheat their way to prosperity. Jimmy Burke, known as Jimmy Conway in the film, is an Irishman who comes up with daring schemes, such as the organisation of the Lufthansa heist. He is intelligent and ruthless, murdering even his own underlings if it means he makes a buck. Tommy DeSimone, known as Tommy DeVito in the movie, in contrast is wild and volatile, an unstable cowboy who seems like he can blow his top off at any moment, shoot you in an instant if he suddenly feels enraged, and as such other characters look uncomfortable around him. Chalk it up to insecurity, little man syndrome, or a desire to prove himself as a gangster, Tommy is quite simply unpredictable. In fact, I have a video called The Real Reason Why Tommy Was So Crazy, where I look to find a real life answer as to why Tommy was so unstable. In any case, Tommy's temper causes many situations in the film, like the shooting and eventually the killing of Spider, all over a single comment. Tommy also has a beef with Billy Batts, the ex-con who's done 6 years not a peep and is now out of prison. Enjoying his coming home party where he decides to break Tommy's balls a little. Things get out of hand, glasses are smashed and voices are raised, and Tommy leaves, only to come back a while later, beat up Billy, with Jimmy, eventually killing him and burying his body. This comes back to haunt Tommy though, as later in the film, when he thinks he is about to attend a ceremony for him to become a made man, officially inducted into the mob, he is instead shot suddenly, and as Henry tells us in the voiceover, it was revenge for Billy Batts, and a whole lot of other things. Now there are so many different talking points in Goodfellas, in particular the character of Tommy and the whole Billy Batts situation, and I've covered many of them on the channel, like why didn't Billy Batts run when he heard Tommy say keep him here? What's the one murder that Tommy committed in the film that he didn't want to? Why weren't Jimmy and Henry also killed for the murder of Billy Batts? Check out the channel for more videos on Goodfellas and subscribe if you like what you see. Today we're concerned with a very simple question. Tommy killed Batts, a made man, in an unsanctioned hit, so the mob killed Tommy. But how did the mafia even know Tommy killed Billy Batts? How did they find out when the only people in the bar that night were Jimmy and Henry? Of course, an acceptable answer could simply be that news travelled. The mob has ways of communicating, and through the grapevine it became common knowledge that Tommy had Batts killed. After all, Tommy had a public altercation with Batts the same night he went missing. Plus, if you remember, there's a couple that walk out of the bar as Tommy walks in to assault Batts. Perhaps they were questioned, mentioned that they saw Tommy come out of the bar, and the mob put 2 and 2 together. This answer suffices for the film, but not for the true story, as in real life Billy Batts was not killed on the same night that he and Tommy had their shoe shining incident, but some weeks later. In the film, we see that Paulie interrogates Henry, wanting to know if he knows anything about the disappearance of Batts, saying that they're busting my balls about this bastard. So no one knew at this time whether there were heavy suspicions or not Paulie, not Batts' crew. It's at least 6 months later in the movie when Tommy is killed, as this time jump is mentioned by Henry, and Tommy worked for Paulie. So for the Gambino crew, who Batts was with, to kill Tommy, they would have to have Paulie's okay. Real greaseball shit, I know, but the point is that by that point, Paulie would have known too. So if no one knew who initially killed Batts, someone must have snitched on Tommy. Well, who was it? Henry? Jimmy? Unlikely, as they could have just as easily been killed for it like Tommy was. In fact, as I mentioned in a previous video on why Henry and Jimmy weren't killed, it is thought that the Gambinos did ask for Jimmy's head. But Paulie thought him worth too much, and he was too much of a good earner. Anyway, the man who ratted out Tommy in real life is actually thought to be Paulie himself. But why would Paulie give up Tommy? Well, it's a bit of a long story, but to summarise, Paulie and Karen, Henry's wife, actually had an affair at one point, likely when Henry was in prison. As we see in the film, Henry's marriage is on the brink of collapse, and he stays with his girlfriend for a time, prompting Paulie and Jimmy to visit him and get the couple to reconcile. There's a curious little line said by Paulie when he tells Henry he will speak to Karen. He says, "I know how to talk to her, especially to her." It's a bit of a strange line, one that makes your ears perk, and it's seemingly a little cheeky nod to the fact that Paulie had been sleeping with Karen, hence why he knows how to talk especially to her. Then again, The book in which Henry claimed Karen and Paulie were having an affair was not published until after Goodfellas came out, so perhaps this line is a fluke, a happy coincidence, or maybe wise guy author Nicholas Pileggi, who had direct access to Hill, knew things which were not yet public knowledge. It makes sense not to show that Paulie and Karen had an affair in the film from a narrative point of view. It would undermine Paulie as a father figure to Henry if it was shown that he was betraying Henry, and as such makes Henry's betrayal of Paulie with the drugs and the lies have more gravitas. Likewise, if the movie portrayed the affair, Karen would come off in a worse light. Henry sleeping around wouldn't seem as bad, as it would seem like everyone was sleeping with each other at one point or another. But the point is, they were having an affair, not shown in the film. Also not shown in the film is that Tommy attempted to rape Karen. Now it's likely Karen went to Paulie and told him what happened. Or it's possible even that Tommy himself told Paulie that he approached Karen and she rejected his advances. It's not as if he would know that Paulie was banging Karen. But it's unlikely that Tommy would have slipped up himself, as one thing about these old-timers, they don't like you messing with a guy's wife. It could be even as simple as Henry himself telling Paulie that Tommy killed Bats after Karen came to him saying Tommy tried to violate her. Upon hearing what Tommy did, an outraged Paulie would have told the Gambinos that Tommy was the killer of Billy Bats and given permission to have him taken out. In the film, it's Paulie's own crew who take out Bats, but it's thought that in real life it was the Gambinos who did the deed, some even claiming that John Gotti himself killed Tommy, taking his time while he did so. But this poses another question. How did Paulie himself know that Tommy killed Bats? Well, again, we have to take real life accounts with a pinch of salt. But one major narrative is that it was common knowledge that Tommy killed Billy Bats. It wasn't a case of no one knowing and Paulie giving up Tommy when he found out. It's more of a case of the Gambinos itching for Tommy's head, but Paulie refusing and protecting him. But due to Tommy's subsequent antics, he gave him up. And it wasn't just the Karen assault, as we're told, a whole lot of other things, which apparently included lifting his ski mask during the Lufthansa heist and showing his face, which could have compromised Jimmy's entire outfit. Tommy was also wanted by the Gambinos for the murder of a man called Ronald Foxy Geroth, a close friend of John Gotti, who is not yet boss. And the reason Tommy killed him in the first place is because he was dating Foxy's sister, beat her up, and when Geroth heard about this, he threatened to kill him, so Tommy got to him first. Just an all-round unpleasant character. Tommy was a liability, bringing heat on Paulie himself with the Billy Bats question. As Paulie says, he was a bad seed, he had too much to prove. He straight up calls him crazy at one point, and it stands to reason Paulie got fed up with Tommy somewhere along the way, in between the unsanctioned killing of 2 men and the attempted rape of Karen, and he gave him up to the Gambinos. So there you have it. Though mob history is a murky affair, it is very much thought that the man who gave up Tommy was Paul himself. For more videos, consider subscribing to the channel, and thanks for watching.